in 1932 in Nova Scotia, police officially launched an investigation into witchcraft.
You gave very few details, but I assume that you're talking about this.
The details of the case are really hard to find, including the man's name.
They weren't that hard to find. It took about 10 minutes on newspapers.com, which has a free trial. And the story is sad. It's really sad. I'm not going to play the whole video because most of it is just ChatGPT like filler words, but every single one of the claims made are either wrong, embellished, or misleading. I'm not going to waste any time on the first claim. It is misleading, so I'll just put the evidence here. So here's the story. At 11 a.m., December 14th, 1931, in Nineveh, Lunenburg County, Nova Scotia, 52-year-old Lemuel Smith was cutting pulpwood with his two sons, not too far from his house when he was shot in the head. His sons, Donald and Laurie, looked up, saw their father crumple to the ground, dying instantly, and then they saw a man wearing black run into the woods. It is important to note that there were a lot of violent deaths in Lunenburg between 1919 and 1931, including Gilbert Simpson, who on that same day that Lemuel died, shot himself after the police questioned him about finding his brother Miles's body being found in a creek. A man named Havelock shot his father and 3 neighbors in 1920. Then a Wilson Huey killed Margaret Smith, and then himself in 1919. A man from Lunenburg, Harry Townsend, confessed to murdering his sister in 1926. In 1929, Flora Lucy Krause died of a gunshot wound to the heart. In 1921, Lemuel's father, the man who died, his father George, was shot and killed. So back to Lemuel. When the police arrived, they found a heavy black raincoat near the scene, and in the pocket there was a note, and on the note there were 3 names: Lemuel, Faye Smith, who was Lemuel's brother, and a woman named Goldie. The letter accused these 3 people of putting a witch on and hinted that their deaths would break the spell. The letter was signed by Lemuel's nephew and 23-year-old cousin Naaman Smith. The police spent like 30 hours searching for him after the murder, and he had been staggering and wandering through the blizzard-swept countryside and wandered into 2 different houses. The first one gave him mittens and food, and the second one, he was just sitting there and chatting when the police walked in and arrested him. When the police questioned him, Naaman said he was righting a wrong. He said that he believed his Uncle Lem, Faye, and Goldie had magical powers. Naaman's claim was that the 3 people believed that this woman named Brownhead had shot and killed their father, George, in 1921. And he accused Goldie of electrocuting her and stated that Brownhead was not the one who killed George. And he was right. Brownhead wasn't the one who killed George because it was widely accepted as an accident. Croswell Loans and Elkanah Krause shot George, Lemon Faye's father, in 1921 accidentally while they were hunting a moose, and it was immediately ruled as an accident. Funny enough, not funny, Elkanah was married to Flora, that woman that I had just said that shot herself in the heart, and that was ruled a suicide. I could find 0 evidence for a woman named Brownhead, and I searched like every spelling variation. There was no Brownhead that was tortured, kidnapped, murdered, or electrocuted between 1921 and 1931. I don't think that she existed. Naaman Smith grew up in a very superstitious town, and Naaman Smith was physically and mentally disabled. He had heart and lung issues, and at the trial for Lemuel's death, he was found to have had a mental capacity of a 7 to 12-year-old child. He had a traumatic birth, and he was always in bad health, and it worsened with age, and then he fell on his head from a hayloft, which made his psychic problems, as they said, worse. He couldn't do any physical labor and spent all of his time alone. Despite genuinely being loved by his family, his dad said that he kept mostly to himself, and he would not notice or understand what they were talking about in the house, and if people came there, he would take off into a room by himself, and they would not see him at all. 4 months before the murder, his family took him to a hospital to get help for his mental and psychic symptoms. However, Naaman was released after only a 4-day stay from the hospital, and there were no further offer of referral or suggestion of any procedures that would provide any proper treatment. So it isn't mysterious. There isn't some witch laying curses. The police didn't think a witch was laying curses. The poor kid thought his uncle was a witch, and he wasn't. This devastated his family. His father, Gates, was distraught because he had bought the gun for Naaman for his birthday, and his mother was bedridden. Where the witchcraft does come into play is that the police did reportedly find witch doctors in the area, in the rural parts of Nova Scotia, and the community believed in witchcraft, which was really heavily exposed because this story was heavily publicized after Lemuel's death. When the police told Naaman that he had shot his uncle in the head, he responded with, "No, I shot him in the heart," because the local superstition was, as the police found out, was that a person who has the power to work evil through witchcraft must be shot in the heart. So the police were not investigating weird and mysterious circumstances. They were looking into the hysteria and trying to put an end to it, because this witchcraft hysteria was what caused Lemuel's death. The police declared the belief in witchcraft as being preposterous. Local newspapers ran with it because, like, what a great story about witchcraft. But by the tone of a lot of these newspaper articles, from the cities especially, they were making fun of these rural people for believing in witches. Naaman was found guilty and sentenced to hang, but due to having proved insanity, he spent his life, according to the paper, at Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick. But his nephew Gerald said that he actually was at and spent his life at Halifax County Hospital. He died in 1975 at 67 years old and is buried with his family at the Smith Family Cemetery in Nineveh. His nephew also said this about his uncle in a post called "Remembering My Uncle Naaman." He said, "He seemed unaware of the life he had taken and of the hurt and grief he had caused in Nineveh. He was now a quiet, gentle person with a childlike manner who was happy, who laughed a lot, and who was not lonely anymore." So, not really the crazy witch story you were looking for.